100. Got traffic there. Last there, just take it up to the departure end of the runway, then a left turn and a left downwind. Cessna over the threshold, coming up on the white dot, at or beyond the white dot, left turn first available. I got a high wind coming up on about a half-mile final, clear to land at or beyond. Traffic on the left face, you're following a Cessna down, low off your left. Square it up just a little bit, and then we're going to get you in. Start your descent, though. Start your descent on the base. Traffic on final, give me follow on base. Base traffic, start turning toward the numbers now. High wing coming up on quarter-mile final, take it all the way down to the green. Cessna taxiing on the green, expedite down to the next hard surface. Get me some speed, there you go, 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 go fast. This is going to be good. I got traffic on a mile final, you're following traffic ahead and to your right. High wing coming up on the threshold, take it all the way down to the green dot.
5 Charlie Sierra, 2 mile final.
A mile final, turn north, and we're going to just make you, we're going to bring you back around. Jet traffic's coming up on about a mile and a half final, runway 9er clear to land.
Okay, all right, let's listen up, guys. If you're on final for runway 9, I want you offset to the left. I got a jet that's landing on runway 9. The jet's cleared to land runway 9 if you can make it. If not, just continue straight ahead. It looks like you're going around for the jet. That's fine, that's fine, that's fine.
Oh, we had one right in front of us, sir.
Dragger. Let's see, what we got, a tricycle. Tricycle, put it down. Tricycle, put it down. Tricycle, put it down. Tail dragger, down to the green dot, then a left turn. Short final here, you clear to land on 9, all the way to the white dot, go down to the white dot. Find somebody to follow out here. Canard, just come to the runway and I might have to just send you around. That'll be fine. And for the jet, you just want to stay in this pattern or you want to go back out for an instrument approach?
Stay in a pattern, Charlie Sierra.
All right, just stay with me here for a minute. And my tail dragger, let's see, over the numbers, go down to the green. And Canard's going to have to go around. Canard, go around. Canard, go around. Canard, go around. And my high wing here over the runway, keep it airborne. Keep it airborne. Do not descend. Do not descend. You got a fast guy behind you. Do not descend. There you go. Keep it airborne. Keep it airborne. As soon as the guy behind you gets slowed down, I'm going to put you down. So keep it airborne. The one that just passed the white dot, make a left turn on the hard surface. All right, my high wing tail dragger, you can put it down now. You can put it down now. And Charlie Sierra, let me get you about a mile off. Let's see, Charlie Sierra, I lost. There you are. Make a left-hand turn. I'll try to resequence you here on the downwinds. We'll see how it looks. Short final, you're clear to land runway 9 on the white dot. Clear to land on the white dot. There you go. And the tricycle left on the hard surface and follow the flagman. Welcome. Thanks for being part of the show. And let's see, just find somebody to follow out follow on the final, and as you get close to the runway, if it's not going to work, we're going to send you around and then try to re-sequence you. Now, who else got sent around that's not back on the downwind? The Canard?
Yeah, Canard.
All right, Canard, there's a Gulfstream up there that went around too. I just lost sight of him, but you're going to make kind of a left-hand turn and stay low. I think Charlie Sierra, what's your altitude?
3,200.
Okay, that'll be fine. Just maintain VFR. I don't know what else is up there above you. Probably most everybody's down here, so just make a left-hand turn. We'll try to get you back here.
Canard's got the jet in sight.
Okay, the RV, maybe an RV-10, whatever, you're on final. Keep your speed up and go all the way down to the, aim for the green dot for me. Actually, keep your speed up. There's a guy behind you. Aim for the green dot, and I'm sure that's plenty of room for you to land on runway 9. You're clear to land on runway 9. Number 2, you're going to go down to the white dot. Follow the white dot. Actually, you know what? That's 1,500 feet. You're going to land at the white dot. The spacing looks adequate here. 2 guys on final. You're kind of tight there. Keep each other in sight, and you're going to aim for the white dot. If it's not going to work, we'll come up with a plan B. We might have to send you around. The second guy behind you out there in about a 2-mile final. Are you slow enough to be able to follow that guy in front of you? You need to go around. Well, I probably shouldn't ask that because I had about 5 guys answer me, so I should know better than that. After 35 years, you would think, right? All right, so let me see. The guy who's number 1, it's number 1. What kind of airplane is he? An RV type. All right, RV type. Keep it airborne for me. Keep it airborne. And I got a fast guy behind you. The number 2 guy over the trees there. Go ahead and put it down on the numbers. Put it down on the numbers. My first guy just coming up on the numbers at the over the grass at the numbers. I want you to keep it.
T-minus 1 minute and counting.
Hello.
Four, three, two, one.
Hello.
Hello, welcome to the live stream, everybody, on this absolutely gorgeous Thursday evening. It's bloody lovely out there. I am very, very, very happy to say that in the green room is Paul Bertorelli, the one and the only Paul Bertorelli, who'll be joining us later. So really, really, really looking forward to that. Plus, as an extra bonus, we've got Simon live, about to give us a weather briefing. You know the weather's going to be good when Simon's coming on live. We've got a bit of old serum news. We've got another aeroplane coming to the UK. We've got some other bits and pieces around Shobden and some other airfields. And also, I just wanted to say before we move on to the next bit, some of you, many of you will know and remember Steve Levine. I say remember, I said that wrong. Remember when Steve Levine was one of the stalwart moderators on the Flyer Forum. Steve's not very well and in hospital tonight. So just wanted him and everyone else to know that we're thinking of him on behalf of everyone here. So get well soon, Steve. Right, I need to say thank you to SkyDemon as I slowly scroll down in my very smooth way for the tip. There you go, SkyDemon. Thank you very much for supporting the live stream. And if you don't use SkyDemon, give it a go. And here is the tip for this week.
Hi, I'm Hannah from SkyDemon, and this is this week's top tip. If you're not sure where you want to fly to, the Find a Destination tool might help you make up your mind. You'll see the Find a Destination button at the bottom of the screen when no route is planned, or in the Airfields tab. Once activated, the airfields on the map will display a bubble showing things like ratings, landing fees, and food availability. Some even show a ranking, which is based on the number of unique visitors to the airfield. Tap on a bubble to open the Airfields tab, then tap Fees, Fuel Facilities to see the overall rating, fuel prices and landing fees submitted by other users. You can even send your own feedback, which may help others decide to visit this airfield. For more information, go to our website, skydemon.aero.
That is a great tool.
If you don't know where to go, ask SkyDemon. It will tell you.
It's a great tool, and it is one I have used and know how to use, unlike the centre of gravity function. So
I put a 182, so I would never have to work it out.
Yeah, you just go in, it fits, it flies.
That's a joke. Actually. That is a joke.
Yes,
That.
Not serious flight advice from Ian Seeger. Now, I heard a rumour of a spell of good weather that's on the way. Shall we see what the weather wizard has to say?
Let's see what the weather wizard has to say.
Hey, evening all. How are you doing? Hope that that you're well this evening. Yeah, there's talk of good weather. I think really it ramps up next week, but actually this weekend isn't looking bad at all either. So I'm keeping everything crossed. Should we take a look at the detail, see what's going on? This is the forecast chart for tomorrow, for Friday. We've got fronts out towards the west. It probably looks more threatening than it is actually for most of us. We've got some rain across Ireland, perhaps getting into western Scotland. This is a really slow moving feature though, that's moving into higher pressure that's further east. So it's weakening all the time. What it is doing is introducing quite a bit of moisture. So I think there's going to be a fair amount of cloud around for most of us tomorrow. You see here the green colours telling us bases between about 2,000 and 4,000 feet. And you can see some quite big plates of cloud hanging around tomorrow across most of England, Wales and Scotland. It will be broken, tops on that only at about 5,000 feet. So it's not that bad at all. But you can see here across Ireland, things not good there. But I think actually with light winds tomorrow, it looks like being a decent sort of day. Now, Saturday, the remnants of that front kind of just lying down western parts of the country during the course of Saturday. It's got cloud with it. It's got bits of mist and some hill fog there through parts of Wales, western parts of Scotland, parts of southwest England. And you can kind of see it sort of sitting there, that cloud here on the cloud ceiling forecast. The yellow colours are 1,000-foot bases. The greens, as we said, 2,000 to 4,000 feet. So you can see from many parts of central western Scotland, northwest England, Wales, southwest England, yeah, it's murky. Further east, though, eastern Scotland, eastern parts of England, looking much better. Bases here, probably around 4,000 or 5,000 feet and above. And actually there, the cloud, again, well broken. So, yeah, I think east is best on Saturday. Light winds for all of us. And then finally, Sunday, again, another one of those charts that looks more threatening than it actually is. This warm front that you see here is actually tied into high pressure. So I think all that's going to do is bring us some sort of medium level altocumulus or altostratus cloud across most of England and Wales. Typical bases probably around sort of 4,000 or 5,000 feet. Well broken cloud on that. But through Scotland, through Ireland, you see the front sort of trailing through back there. So way more cloud there. Cloud ceiling forecast picking that up at about 1,000 to 2,000 feet and above. So some hill fog in those areas. But as I say, for most of England and Wales, I think it looks as if it is going to be a fairly decent day again. So I don't know about you, but that doesn't look too bad a weekend, does it? And like I say, next week, promise of higher pressure building in. I think it may be a little bit stop-start, so it might be middle to the end of next week before it really gets going, but some really warm weather ahead. These are perfect conditions for learning about SKUTs. You know I bang on about these all the time, and you email me and ask me about them. Well, my Pilot's Guide to SKUTs course is an online course that you can do through weatherschool.co.uk now. It takes about 3 hours, and you'll be up to speed with SKUTs. You'll be able to forecast things like cloud bases, tops, winds at different levels, showers, rain, mist, fog for any location up to 8 days in advance. So if you want to do something, go and have a look at weatherschool.co.uk. Do some weather learning now. New dates for my Weather School courses will be announced very soon. But for now, I think that's just about it. Have a great weekend. Have a safe weekend. And I'll see you next week. Bye for now.
Thank you very much. See you.
Yes, Simon.
Thanks, Simon. Very slick. Very good.
Yeah. Let's get on to some more slickness and hand over to Dave for our big news story of the week.
Well, this time last week, we were literally getting the first news of the fire at Old Sarum Airfield, where the historic hangar, the Hangar 3, a Grade 2 star listed building, that was on fire. And it did look pretty dire with all these these pictures. Very intense fire. So clearly there was stuff in there which probably related to its old activities of aviation, fuels and oils and stuff like that. Really intense fire. Now, 1 week on, what's been happening? Well, you have to say first of all that Wiltshire Police and Fire Service are still investigating the fire. But when it's as intense as that, there's not much left for them to look at really, because any kind of wiring, that's gone. That's going to be burnt to a cinder. So it's going to be very hard to conclude that investigation unless they've got some CCTV or something like that to kind of indicate it. However, it's not all bad news. During the week, a chap called Taff Gillingham, who's a military historian, and he advises on films, TV and theatre productions. Anyway, Taff came up and said, it's not all bad news, it's not a disaster, because those old Belfast trusses, as it's called, the wooden structures that held up the roof, they were rotten and they would have to be replaced at some point. And if you've ever tried to restore an old house, I've done several, you know that trying to restore bits of old wood is a really painful task. You're far better off starting from new. And that's what he's saying. He's saying that just like in another restoration at a place called Houghton Park, up in Cheshire, they were faced with a far worse situation in a very similar hangar, and they've restored it to be a very beautiful thing. So he says, so long as some people get in there and can stabilize the brick walls and the brick turrets, the things that hold up the trusses, so long as they can be stabilized, this could actually make it easier to restore the old hangar. Some people might say it's going to be a rebuild. It's not going to be the original. It was never going to be an original when it was rebuilt because those trusses were rotten. So this is actually quite a good thing. The fire also destroyed the cafe next door, known as Hangar 3 Cafe for obvious reasons. But we've just learned tonight that they're reopening a cafe. Obviously not the one that burnt down, but they're going to reopen a temporary thing. And I think that's partly to do with the skydiving operation, which is based next door and somehow survived. But they're going to reopen a temporary cafe there. And the other thing that's been going on is that the tenants of the other two hangars, Hangar 2 and Hangar 1, which are still there and still intact, they're a bit worried because they're the same age. They've had the same kind of past, and so they've been going through looking at their hangars, trying to find out if there's anything that they need to do to improve their fire protection. You know, losing one's bad enough, but losing all three would be absolutely terrible. So it's not a complete disaster as it first seemed like this time last week.
Well, I think it's true to say that the potential's there for it not to be a complete disaster. We still need the hangar to be rebuilt and stabilised. I guess I'm kind of hoping that the owners are now, amongst other things, beginning to consider when they can open it up for all of us to fly in again.
Yep. I mean, I have spoken to them, but I have not had a conclusive answer on that, unfortunately. They have got a contract with the skydive operation, so clearly that they have to take that into account. I don't know the details of that contract, but it's a pretty full-on affair. The Skydive is a very well organised company, and they when they're operating, they really do take over the airfield. So it's they've got to sort out the details of that. But yes, it'd be great if they reopened the whole airfield and got it moving again.
It certainly would. And I mean, places like Dunkerswell and Beccles come to mind that manage to blend skydiving and general aviation activities, and plenty of places in the US as well do. Anyway, it's not an insurmountable problem. Where there's a will, there's a way. The will gets willed.
Answering the question, is there an alternative to the very popular Evector Eurostar EV97 microlight? Sywell-based Flylight Airsports think they found it in the form of the Direct Fly Alto NG. This is a new 600 kg microlight, and they are planning to bring it to the UK. They'll be showing one at the Microlight Trade Fair at Popham on 2nd to 3rd of May. In a post on social media, Flylight said, "We've been keeping a little secret. We've always had a soft spot for the Eurostar, but as the world has moved on and pilots want an aeroplane that takes advantage of the increased weight limits, we think we found a worthy successor in the Direct Fly Alto." So they say it's modern matched hull manufacturing technology, greater range, payload performance, and a host of other small refinements at a surprisingly affordable price. No price is given. I did look around on the internet. It seems that the Alto sells in the US, and the most recent price I could find for that worked out around about £110,000. So, but that won't be bad if you get 100 horsepower, 2-seat 600 kg microlight. Flylight, I think it's good. They're pretty good judges, aren't they? So
yes, yeah,
pretty good judges, yeah, absolutely. Dave.
Yes, well, it's another airfield story. This time it's back to Nottingham City Airport, which everyone knows as Tollerton. You may know, of course, that there's a proposal to build houses on the airfield. That's yet to get planning permission. However, the landowner, a company called Vistry, have decided to close the airfield anyway in June. So this has really kind of stirred it all up. And the campaign to try and stop all this happening, called Save Nottingham City Airport, it's straight to the point. Anyway, they've decided to have a protest march to the council HQ in Nottingham City tomorrow. That coincides with the deadline for comments on the local plan, which sort of says this block of land is set aside for housing. It turns out also that the local council, Nottingham City Council, I guess, Nottingham Council, they own a chunk of the land as well. And the whole project would not be viable if they didn't put their bit of land into it. Can't imagine not going to, because they've got pressure on locally to build houses. So I can imagine they will be doing that. But the campaign, which is headed by this woman who's not a pilot, she just loves the airfield, Sarah Deacon, she just keeps going. She just keeps going, driving it forwards. And it'd be good to see what comes of this protest tomorrow.
Absolutely. Well, you never know. Fingers crossed we might save an airfield, although I suspect we might not somehow. In other airfield news, you would have noticed on some of the Facebook forums and on the Flyer forum, there appears to be an awful lot of people who have basically walked away from Shobdon Airfield. Extremely competent, good, welcoming team here are no longer working at Shobdon. I do believe there's been a couple of other people who've resigned since, and there have been some NOTAMs out. NOTAMing Shobdon closed on various days while they train up some new air traffickers. You may well wonder what happened. I also wonder what happened, and the fact is, there's lots of rumours about what's happened, but I'm not entirely sure that those rumours are strong enough to be stood up and put out in public at the moment. I think I have heard a couple of people suggest that the working atmosphere there wasn't as enjoyable as it once was. I think that would be a very dramatic way of saying so, but I guess we'll try and find out what's going on and get it confirmed. But things at Shobdon are not quite what they were.
This was the top team, wasn't it? This was airfield manager, marketing manager, ops.
Yeah, sorts of, basically a team that made Shobdon. Nobody likes change, but it seems that the change going on there is perhaps a little bit more dramatic than people expect. Yeah, absolutely. Johnny!
Yeah, so big news from Boeing this week. They've made a big business strategy change, and they've announced the sale of key parts of the digital solutions division to an investment firm called Thoma Bravo, and a deal that's worth just a touch over $10.5 billion. Now, the agreement, which they revealed a couple of days ago, includes brands like Jeppesen and 4Flight, which we all are aware of, as well as Air Data and Oz Runways, which I had never heard of, but it's the Australian version of 4Flight, I guess.
Yeah.
So Boeing is parting ways with all of those, and for a lot of people, the question is going to be, well, is everything going to stay supported during the transition, after the transition? There's a lot of people that rely on all this software, but they've said that they're going to basically keep some kind of information sharing agreement going between the two companies for a while afterwards, which I think is aimed at making sure nothing like that happens, because it could cause chaos if anything goes wrong with a product like 4Flight, especially.
Yeah.
Thoma Bravo, if you go online and have a look, they're kind of private equity company. They have a huge number of software companies, and fairly big ones as well. So I suspect they won't want it. I mean, they're a private equity company, so I think they're going to want a pound of flesh at some point, aren't they?
Yeah. And I guess that must seem like a fairly attractive purchase, because everyone uses Jep data. So
$10.5 billion. That's a lot.
And it was.
I
noted it was there was a note as well that it was an all cash deal. So it's like someone's going to be counting that for a while.
Do you think Tim over at SkyDemon is going, blimey, 10.5 billion for 4Flight?
Yeah, it's probably more Jefferson. I think Jefferson's got a bunch of value, and Johnny, Oz Runways is basically, rather than being the Australian 4Flight, would have probably been the equivalent of a kind of Australian SkyDemon, really. But yeah, a chunk of money.
Yeah.
There you go.
It'll fill a gap in Boeing's finances for a week or two. So
yeah. Cool.
Flying boat news, because we don't get that very often. The Chinese government has announced type certification for a new amphibious aircraft called the AG600. It's a 4-engine turboprop with 130-foot wingspan. China said it's made the effort to ensure the aircraft is accepted worldwide. It's their first large civil special purpose aircraft developed in accordance with the requirements of the civil aviation regulations around the world, said their government. While the AG600 is primarily described as a water bomber, some believe that it's to be used to carry cargo and personnel to some islands in the South China Seas where the country has imposed its sovereignty in a disputed territory. If there's an upside to this, though, it's that it's supposedly caused the US Air Force to dust off plans for a float-equipped C-130, which is a monster of an aeroplane. So, apparently we're now in seaplane wars. So,
well, there was still that the new version of the Catalina that was floating around with some CGI images a year or two ago, wasn't there?
Yeah, but a real Chinese flying boat and the US Air Force saying we want a Hercules on floats seems more likely than a CGI Catalina. So
I did just when everyone's building drones like mad and going to war with drones, then we end up going back to the 40s for flying boats. When were they last? Yeah,
there is a good reason for it, because you don't have to build a runway for a float plane. You can just land it on water. That's their appeal.
You don't have to build a runway for a drone either, do you?
Well, no.
Here we go. Erotique says, "Make amphibians great again."
Very good.
Yeah.
I like that.
Nice.
Yeah.
Awesome.
They probably are good at getting things to. They're probably good for getting things to islands where there's not lots of big runways.
Yeah.
Johnny, rattle through the club news, and then we'll get over to our special guest.
Yeah, so you can join, if you're not a member, join the Fly Club for £5 a month, fly.co.uk/membership. April landing fees. We've got Fife, Straven, Cardiff and Slape, and a quick look ahead to May. We've got Bagby, Skye and Haverfordwest coming up so far, which is really good news. So thank you to all of those airfields. You can catch up on Dave White's Flying into Europe webinar if you're a member, and you can catch up on everything prior to that as well, including Steve Morley's Spring Cleaning Your Flying, Ed Bellamy's Piston Engine Icing, and Greener's Forced Landing webinars, which are all available to watch on catch up, as well as nearly 2 years worth of other great webinars. So head over there if you are a member. If you're not, just join. £5 a month, fly.co.uk/membership.
Fabulous.
Good, cool, excellent. Right, let's bring on Paul. Let's put you out there.
I was going to do the introduction.
Oh, sorry, Paul. Just look away.
That's all right. We can have Paul on screen.
I screwed it up already.
No. It's not you, Paul. It's always Ian with button pushing. We give him buttons to push, and he's quite dangerous, to be honest. So our guest tonight needs little introduction. Paul Bertorelli was a writer, reporter for 5 decades, instructor, charter pilot, and co-founder of AVweb, creator of some of light aviation's most entertaining video content, and fundamentally one of the most trusted and informed general aviation reporters of our time. When Paul announced he was retiring in November 2023, we all knew the aviation world would be a slightly less fun place without him. So we're delighted he's taken time out from jumping out of aeroplanes. He's a keen skydiver with close to 4,000 jumps to accept our invite to join us on the live stream. And I think if you were a journalist export from America, Paul Bertorelli would incur no UK tariffs. Welcome.
That's encouraging. Happy to be here. Thanks for inviting me.
That's all right. Ian's on the button push, isn't he, tonight?
That button does something different now.
Hang on.
Oh.
Oh, no.
See what I mean?
It is. That button doesn't work like it used to.
I know.
Who's got control of the buttons here?
No one. Hang on. Well, this
is why I never did live stream.
There you go.
Yeah,
there you go. There we go.
If we press enough buttons, then eventually, rule of luck, Ian will blow up.
The annoying thing is that StreamYard, who create this software, have been taken over, and they keep introducing new features. And new things appear, and they change the function of some of the existing.
Anyway. And important question. Catkin says, "Where are his captain stripes?" Perhaps your most famous video, which we'll get to in a bit. Paul, what made you want to be a journalist?
That is a good question. I guess after when I was in the Army, I was in Vietnam, and I think I met some freelance journalists who were covering the war at the time, and I thought, well, that seems kind of interesting, and I sort of kept it in the back of my head for a while. And then when I got out and went to college at the University of Maryland, they had a journalism program, so I got into it and went into newspapers, went into magazines, and here I am.
And where did you start off? Was it a paper, or
Yeah, I started off with a daily newspaper in Maryland, not too far from the University of Maryland, and I worked there for 4 years. Then I went into magazines. Initially, the magazines I worked on was a woodworking magazine, the biggest woodworking magazine in the U.S. then, called Fine Woodworking. I was a woodworker at the time, still am, and I became editor of that.
Yeah.
And then I went out and did some freelance. And at the time, I was instructing, flying and instructing. So the opportunity to join Belvoir as an editor, first with IFR, then Aviation Consumer, and then as the editorial director came up. So that got me through most of a career.
Wow.
And obviously you've seen a lot of we've all seen a bit of kind of concepts come along and new things be launched. You've seen a lot of that, haven't you, in your time? Have you, when kind of in your career did you start going, I need some skepticism, and because some of this stuff is not going to happen?
I was fortunate in that I came up in journalism, and we're talking about 1974 at the time of Watergate, which was a big deal in the U.S., not so much probably in the U.K. But as journalists, both in J School and at the paper I worked at, we were trained to be critical thinkers. And we were trained to be able to write critically, report objectively, but write critically in opinion pieces. And I really never lost that. And when I went to work for Belvoir really prized traditional journalism values, and which meant that we reported as honestly as we could and let the cards fall where they may. And we didn't have any advertisers, so we didn't have any sacred cows we had to mind. And that just stayed with me throughout. And Belvoir absolutely encouraged that throughout all the time I was there. And that's what made it such a great place to work, because you knew if you had a critical report, we wouldn't pull any punches and the company would stand behind you.
And I think the boss, I forget his surname, was it Tim was one of your bosses at Belvoir?
Yeah, Tim Cole. In fact, he and I joined at about the same time. He had come over from, I think, Popular Mechanics. And we joined within like 2 weeks of each other. And he was the editorial director, vice president. And I came in to edit IFR, and then I took over Aviation Consumer. And then during that period, independent of Belvoir, Mike Bush launched AVweb. That would have been 1994-ish, I think. It was one of the first, if not the first, aviation website, certainly the first news website. And so I helped him launch that. I did the news. And then I just got too busy, and I gave up that. And then in 2002, Belvoir bought AVweb, so I took over again as the editorial director.
So can you remember, just jumping in for a second, given that you were saying that you didn't pull any punches and Belvoir stood behind you, can you remember the first, was there kind of like any the first significant thing you wrote where you thought, this is going to make some people unhappy, they're going to be on the phone, or whatever the equivalent was, writing letters back then rather than sending emails, I guess?
Well, we did coverage of airplanes, and I remember we had a really difficult relationship with Beechcraft, and almost anything that we did, they would complain about. I don't know if you recall the reporting that was done around the time, this would have been in the 1980s, when it was discovered that the V-35, the V-tail, had a structural deficiency up in the very corner of the envelope. And a aeronautical engineer by the name of Brent Silver discovered this. And at the time, everyone's forgotten this now, there was a V-tail crashing about every 6 weeks. And all of them had this characteristic failure in the tail. And he had done excellent work on that. And we did the reporting. And we basically did the exposés just a little bit before I was there. And Beechcraft was very upset about this, and they fought it in court. The Department of Transportation at the time required them to do a recertification. They fought that in court, but it turned out it was correct. And that's where the little cuff on the V-tail comes from, is that reporting, not necessarily an aviation consumer, although we got it out there. And the other aviation magazines carried the water for Beechcraft. They said, no, there's nothing wrong with the V-tail. This is just poor piloting. Well, it turned out that wasn't the case. And as soon as that structural modification was made, the accidents basically stopped. Almost, not entirely, but just about. And so after that, there was another incident. I can't remember what it was. We had done reporting. It was something to do on the Barren. And Beechcraft was still not happy with us, and they threatened to sue. And but we went ahead with the reporting, and I forget, it was some kind of critical report on the Barren. And Belvoir would support that kind of thing throughout. I mean, if it was an avionics manufacturer, Garmin would occasionally complain about stuff we did. So would Bendix King, so would Cessna. But that's fortunately, I was fortunate to be at a magazine at the time where that kind of reporting was valued, and the audience definitely valued it because they felt they could look at a report in Aviation Consumer and feel pretty comfortable that they were getting as close to a warts and all report as was possible to get, because we didn't have to consider any advertisers. And Belvoir really carried that through, right through AVweb, which was advertising supported, and they did a pretty good job of maintaining that balance. There were difficulties. There were times when then we had to, I won't say pull punches, but we had to kind of consider the way we presented things. But we still presented critical reports, and I thought that was admirable. I don't know if that's necessarily the case now. It probably isn't, but because, as you well know, the economics of magazine publishing and journalism are just difficult. Doesn't even begin to describe it.
No, absolutely. I think we're yeah, we're not at the, it's not the golden age of magazine publishing and journalism.
No, it isn't. And 10 years from now, I'll be surprised if there's the same number of print magazines out there that are out there now. It's just that's how difficult it was for us. And since Belvoir sold the division, 2 of those magazines have folded. So that tells you something.
Yeah. What was it like? And obviously, AVweb being, I think you're right in saying it was the first aviation news outlet on the internet. What was that? What was it like to be part of that movement?
You know, it was really exciting because it was just a clean sheet launch. Nobody knew anything about internet publishing. Nobody knew anything about distributed publishing. And Mike Bush had patterned it a little bit after a text newsletter in the Apple community, I think called Apple Bits or Mac Bits or something like that. And so we sort of used that as the pattern. And then we started out with a weekly newsletter of just hard news. And then we went to twice weekly. And now, I guess just as I was leaving, they went to daily, a short daily bulletin. But it felt to me like, you know, this was the mid-90s, and it had been, I don't know, 20 years since I'd been in newspapers. It felt just like newspapers. You know, it had that immediacy of writing first day news or breaking news and getting it on the site and getting the newsletter out. It was just a backbreaking amount of work, though, because we didn't have anything like the kind of automation you have now on websites. So a lot of coding had to be done by hand, and you didn't have buckets to pour stuff into, and it was just, and finally that's where I was working 60 hours a week, and because I was editing 2 magazines then. I was editing Consumer and I was editing IFR in addition to the news.
Wow.
So I'm astonished that I did it. And I did it, I guess, I can't remember how long, maybe a couple years. And then I said, you need to expand this, turn it over to somebody else, because I basically can't continue. And then when it came back, it had evolved quite a bit, and that was 2002. It had evolved quite a bit as a more sophisticated thing, not quite as sophisticated as a website is today, where you have a formal and pretty easy to use content management system, but better, because in 1994, nothing like that existed.
So apart from that kind of thing and things like the Baron, the retail Baron and the Bonanza and the Baron, I think aviation's quite a lot about the people involved. It's a tiny community on a kind of worldwide scale. It's not like the car community or commercial aviation. Are there any kind of standout characters from your experience, either good or challenging?
In your trailer and lead in, there was a 2-second clip of Christian Dries. and I know you are laughing, but for people who never met him, standout character doesn't even begin to describe it. I mean, he was a force, and it was a real loss. I mean, when he dropped out, sold the company and dropped out, but of course you can't blame him. And I put Alan Klapmeyer in there, a true visionary. And, these people really, they knew full well the barriers and difficulties of developing airplanes or developing products, and yet they went ahead with it. On the avionics side, at Garmin in the early days, before Garmin became a multi-billion-dollar company across all segments, it was an interesting and fun company, because the first time I went to visit them, which would have been around maybe 91 or 92, they were in a strip mall in Lenexa, Kansas. I mean, they had a small office and they had one product, and yet they, to watch them grow. Gary Burrell, I never met Min Kao, but Gary Burrell just had a vision, and you could see it, and it was an engineering-based thing, and to see them carry that through so single-mindedly, and they basically mowed down the existing avionics industry. I mean, they just left them for dead.
Do you think, and I was always amazed, because when I was learning to fly, Bendix King were such an enormous brand, and it's like everyone, you would see panels of Bendix King stuff, and you never imagined that Bendix King would, and they pretty much vanished now.
Well, Bendix King, owned the market. They were the avionics market.
Yeah.
The Silver Crown system, that was the gold standard. And when Garmin came along and started shipping at them, they just never responded. They were slow on the uptake with GPS. They made a wrong turn with their first GPS. They were a little ahead of it, and they had to sell it as a Loran first, and then they went back to GPS. But their last competitive product, I thought, was what was it, the KLN 84? It was the little orange gas plasma display thing, which was competitive. I remember flying out there, and they were really pushing it hard, but the mothership just never stood behind it, because they should have easily competed with Garmin. They had the resources, they had the talent, They had everything. What they lacked was the will.
And do you think is that when corporates get almost too big and they kind of lose sight of what they're doing, or there's not the hunger to keep kind of developing?
I think that's probably what it was. They didn't think that general aviation had legs and that there was a lot of profit in it. In that sense, they're right. I mean, the transport category aircraft was certainly a more profitable segment to be in, but you can still make money in GA. And with the right leadership, there's no reason they couldn't still own the market or be more competitive, but they just lost the way. Similar to Narco. Remember Narco? Narco was a player when Bendix King was big. Narco was the competitor.
Yeah.
And then, along came Terra and a couple other manufacturers, and same thing happened to them.
When there's been a couple of, I remember the Epic, when the Epic was first touted as like an $800,000 business jet that was going to take over the world, and I remember at one point Epic was going through massive growth with a guy called Rick Schramek, who was inventing and announcing aircraft every 2 or 3 months. At what point do you kind of approach things with an open mind to begin with, but at what point, can you remember at what point you thought, you know what, $800,000 for an Epic business, that might not quite make it?
I feel that out of the blocks. I mean, I am spring loaded to say this is not going to work.
Okay.
And until you show me that it will, because, I've always said that aviation journalists are a little like battered wives. It's like, well, if I go back to him this time, I know he loves me. He won't beat me again. Well, aviation journalists will tend to, oh, well, this could work. When in the back of your head, said this is unlikely to work. And there are numerous reasons why it wouldn't. And of course, the classic example of that, it was the $3 billion crater that Eclipse was. Here was, when I was covering that Fast and Furious, and that would have been around 2004 to 2006. And I was covering it. One day I called up Bert Rutan, who was telling me about, the revolution of what was going to happen here. And he says, what's going on here is we're seeing all this production equipment that's automated and digital, and that will make it much more economical to make these airplanes. And so I said, well, how many do you think they could do in a year? We're talking about the Eclipse. And he said, oh, easily 20,000. And I thought, no, this doesn't make any sense. And, if you could build the 20,000, which is self-doubtful, but if you could, where the hell would you park them? And second, was the market that size? And, a term you never hear these days is VLJ, right?
Yeah.
You don't even hear it. It's like the industry has buried it, has dug a big hole and buried it because it was never a thing. I did a story, I think it was in Consumer, and I counted 9 of these VLJ projects. 9. I mean, it's crazy.
Yeah.
And no one who was seriously in the business of selling jets of any size thought the volume was there. Just the demand is not there, almost at any price. Yeah. Never mind 600,000 or whatever the intro. I guess what was the intro price of the Eclipse?
I think it was 800. It was less than it was under
825 comes to mind.
Yeah,
and it just didn't ring true. But when we would say that, they would say, "Well, you're living in the past. We're showing you the future." Got it. So we'd go to Oshkosh with the big Taj Mahal booth, and all the mock-ups and all the, the snacks flown in from Paris and all the rest of it. And I used to tell people, I said, don't for a minute think that this makes this legitimate. All that is nice food. It's really got nothing to do with building an airplane.
There's an interesting comment. Adrian Norris says Eclipse in 2004 to 2006 equals eVTOLs 2022 to 2024. I know you ran the number. One of your last things that you did was a really good insight into Joby and their kind of production capacity and things like that. What's your take? As your stance on eVTOLs changed, or it's still firmly in the?
Well, I continue to believe that they have application and market because their capabilities are just so unique.
Yeah.
I continue not to believe that there will be a well-established urban mobility system. I think you'll see it available in some places as a specialized service. But if you look at Joby, I mean, we're not talking thousands here. We're talking hundreds of thousands. And then it's bumping up on 1 million or more of these things. And again, it's a little bit like the Parisian snacks in Eclipse. They got Toyota as a investor. And people will look at that and say, well, Toyota's in on it. It must be a real thing. Not really. I mean, Toyota invests in all kinds of things that go nowhere because it's a big company, got a lot of money, and they rightfully, I think, want to invest in things that might represent the future. I always point out to people that Toyota certified an aircraft engine, certified the Lexus engine. You can go out and the type certificate is still there. They flew it around, and then they just killed it. Not only that, they built an airplane.
Yep.
And everyone thought, oh, this is coming, including me. I predicted they would show up with the airplane at Oshkosh and then it would go nowhere. I was wrong. It went nowhere, but it didn't show up at Oshkosh. Because, they look at Toyota accountants, not their first rodeo. They look at the inputs and the outputs and the market and the liability and all the rest of it. And someone in Japanese says, are we nuts? And, I mean, it's a good thing to explore because, well, maybe there is a way you can make it work. And that's true of Joby too, but I'm not seeing it. In fact, I think what we're starting to see now is a shakeout.
Yeah.
A couple of these companies have gone by the wayside.
Yeah.
And it's the battery limitation is still a real thing. And if you have the specialized application, and the specialized application would be an eVTOL that goes into a place and does things that a helicopter can't, then you would have it as a hybrid.
Yeah.
And the hybrid duty cycles look a lot better. And so you have something that's potentially less expensive to operate than a helicopter.
Yeah.
Have you seen things that have kind of surprised you the other way, where you started off going, well, that ain't ever going to work, is it? And then ended up a year or two down the line and went, okay, so well done, they've cracked it somehow.
Certainly, you must be able to remind me of something. I can't think of anything offhand. I mean, some projects I thought would have legs. I thought the DA-42, the Diamond Twin, would. I didn't think that the DA-40 would. I thought it was a flawed design. I had real doubts about it, but it's done okay.
Yeah.
The diesels, I remember a headline I wrote, and it basically said that I'd gone to Austria to fly it, and I said, it flies really well. It's a very easy to use engine, but are the engines really ready? Well, it turned out to be the right question because the engines weren't ready. This is the Teeler original diesels. And Christian told me, I'm sure he told you too, that about killed the company. It came very close to taking them under.
Yeah. Well, Frank Keeler and Christian Dries never wasted money on buying each other Christmas cards.
That's true. Yeah, and that was, I mean, basically, it was fraud, wasn't it?
Well, yeah. Well, Christian.
Not on Christian's part. On
no. Well, Frank Keeler ended up in prison.
Yeah.
As a result, I think for me the thing, I don't know if this is the same in the States. I remember when we had one of the very early Katanas come over to the UK. I mean, it was powered by a Rotax engine, the 912 ULS, I think it was.
Yeah.
And most of the general aviation Cessna Piper mum and pop schools were all kind of like Rotax, no, can't cope with that. And now I think they're on their way to being one of the dominant engine suppliers, and with the 916 AS at 160 horsepower, who knows what's coming next? I think they've kind of grown in stature over the years, quietly and diligently.
They have, because they've done it correctly. They've followed a modest but persistent path of development, and they learned from that V6 fiasco to how far they have to take the development before they commit to it.
Yeah.
And then produce a workable, saleable project for the market. And I mean, if you go back and look at the diesels, and I looked at the Astra numbers just as I was going out the door, and they doubled the price of the overhaul. And in fact, if I'm not mistaken, did they go to a replacement and not an overhaul? I think they did.
I think they did, actually, yeah.
And I ran the numbers. The numbers still work, but they weren't quite as attractive.
You need to be putting quite a lot of hours on it, and you need gas to be quite expensive. And we pay less in Europe for jet, so in the UK for jet than we do for avgas, which makes a significant difference.
Yeah.
And I guess the other thing that we've seen, I don't know what you felt about. I've never flown with you, so I don't know what you're like as an instructor, whether you're Mr. Traditional or Mr. Modern. So, the rise of the EFBs, the iPads, the apps, leading to being part of a $10.5 billion sale from Boeing, and the 4-flights in the US is massively dominant. I find it hard to imagine flying without those now.
Yeah, they're like anything else. I mean, they're a tool. They give you information. They simplify planning, and they probably add a measure of safety, which otherwise wouldn't be there, particularly with weather calculations and fuel and range calculations and CG calculations. All that stuff is automated, and you can do it right there at the airport cafe on your phone. The downside of that is the same downside you see with glass, which is you just become mesmerized by the technology, and all of a sudden you're not so much flying as you are squiring around a large radio in a 2,500-pound airplane, and the radio becomes the focus. And I found that when glass first came in, and I was doing it too. I was like, God, we're just entirely too head down here. And the classic was Bendix King had flown out to Connecticut to show us something or the other, and I was in the back seat of I think it was a F-33, and the demonstration pilot was in the right seat, the flying pilot was in the left seat, and they were all head down doing something, and right in front of us was a airplane coming right at us, probably 50 feet above us, and I got their attention, and just in time. And I mean, I don't think we would have collided, but it would have been close. And so they descended, and we got out of it. And I thought, this is crazy. How much of this is going on? Probably a lot. I think we've probably kind of figured out a way around that now. And of course, you have ADS-B traffic systems, which will yell at you, so that's good. And in total, I consider those advancements for sure.
Yeah. Well, unfortunately, we're running out of time. Do you think one of your defining moments was being the inventor of the 15 stripe FLX?
Oh, there's Ian. He's got them out.
There we go. Look at that.
The question is, does he have enough of them?
No, he's but just a 4-bar man.
I've still got the shirt in my closet with those things on it. I don't know. I don't know why I did that. I think I had the stripes and I was just going to put them on, and I had extra ones, so I kept putting them on. And it made the silly thing memorable. That was in 2009,
and it will be one of the things I think that you will be most fondly remembered for.
Just a mere 2 years after the arrival of YouTube. Can you imagine that?
Wow,
a lot of
really?
fun.
2 years, Jesus.
Yeah, yeah. They just celebrated their 20th year.
Yeah.
Yeah. 2 decades, isn't it? So are you going to make more videos, or have you knocked that on the head? Too much work.
I've been doing some motorcycle stuff, and I've shot these things. I've shot like 4 of them, and every time I go to edit video, I mean, I used to be good at it. I used to be fast, do a lot of animation and stuff, and every time I do it, it's oh yeah, I remember how much work this is. And I haven't cut anything in about 1.5 years, I guess. And I was thinking, geez, I remember all the ins and outs of doing this? So it's kind of like this little barrier that I have to do it. So I miss it. I don't miss it. I love the medium because it's a great way to tell a story. And when I got into doing the ridiculous animation, well, that's just great fun.
I can only hope that you can find a videographer or an editor, because I would, just like I would watch Paul Bertorelli aviation videos, I'd watch Paul Bertorelli on a motorbike or jumping out of an aeroplane. So.
Well, thanks very much, Ed. Very kind of you to say.
We do what Paul Bertorelli cooking an egg. Let's be honest.
Exactly. Well, fantastic. Paul, thank you so much for taking the time to join us. I know you've been a popular guest, and you've been popular, very fondly demanded by many of our viewers. So we appreciate you taking the time. And yeah, it must be time for Fantasy Hangar. The word is often overused, but in Paul's case, the word legend is very appropriate, because that many years in aviation, and he has been, he is like the barometer of things that we know are right. So
we need to get Paul to come over to the UK, and we need to organise one of those kind of like in a big pub somewhere, like an evening with Paul Bertorelli.
I would just like to get Paul Bertorelli flying in the UK, dealing with British air traffic. I think would be brilliant.
Let's do it.
Yeah. Anyway, Fancy Hangar. So this week we heard the Chinese had built and certified a properly large new flying boat. That made us think, what flying boats would we want in our Fancy Hangar? So who's first?
Johnny.
Oh, straight in with me. Right. I've gone, well, why have one when you can have two? So I've gone for the mid to late 30s short Mayo composite. Look at that. Absolutely insane, bonkers machine.
Why would we have two, Johnny?
Sorry, Ed?
Why would we have two?
Well, one for delivering mail.
Ah.
What was the other one delivering then?
The mail aeroplane. Yeah, it was a combination of shorts and Mayo that came up with it, and it was the short Maya, MAIA, and the short Mercury, which was the one on the top. I just went for it because it's absolutely bonkers.
Why not? It's a good choice.
It is absolutely bonkers. Okay, in that case, Dave, you're next.
Right. Well, I've gone completely in a different direction to Johnny and to the others, because I've gone for this, a 1914 Curtiss Model F flying boat. And it is believed to be that this is a replica. This is a rebuild of one. It is actually based on some parts that some bloke found in the loft of a house he bought, and including the all important data plate. But it has been completely rebuilt, and it's thought to be the only one still intact and flying anywhere in the world. It's just, well, look at it. It's just such a piece of art. It is 1914, and if you've ever driven an old car or an old motorbike, you know that they are strange things and require a bit of careful attention all the time. But I just think that's gorgeous, absolutely gorgeous.
That definitely looks like it comes with special instructions.
Yes, yeah. It's got a huge engine in it. Anyway.
Me next. Well, I'm guessing none of you brought 12 engines to the party, did you? Well, my Dornier did. This is the Dornier 10. It was large, 156 foot span, 56 tons. When it was made in 1929, it was the most powerful flying boat in the world. Sadly, they only had 524 horsepower Bristol Jupiter engines. They did have 12 of these, but that was only barely enough to lift it to 1,300 feet. The engines were controlled by a flight engineer. You saw him there. And in true nautical fashion, this is brilliant. There was a telegraph system, like you see in the film Titanic, where the pilot would select a speed and telegraph that to the engineer, and he would go right, full speed ahead. It had the nickname Flying Ship. When they test flew it in 1929, they did a flight in October later that year, and they put 169 people on board to prove a point. Neatly, 9 of those were stowaways. That would be on a flying ship, wouldn't it? And apparently, that gave it such pendulous weight that the thing wouldn't turn, and they had to get the passengers to run from left to right to assist with the rolling motion. The giant Dornier, though, 103 flights in 1930. They found some more powerful 610 horsepower engines from Curtiss. That meant that they could cross the Atlantic at 1,600 feet. It wasn't a great success. They made 3. They managed to break 3. They never killed anybody. But the neat thing is there's some guys now recreating it, not to fly, but to taxi around on a lake. They're going to make a full-size replica. They're saying they'll be done developing that by 2026. Expect to see a Dornier floating by you in 2029, apparently.
Yeah, I think I'm going to take the Paul Bertorelli cynical look on that. And the beaten wife look at it. Quite nice. Right,
so what did you go for, Ian?
I went for the Boeing 314 Clipper. Look at that.
Oh, yeah.
4 engines, I don't know, 1,500 horsepower, depending on thing. Couple of big firsts on this historic thing. This is the first aircraft to use commercially 100 octane avgas. Who knew that?
Oh, okay.
It was also, of which it needed 4,246 gallons to cross either the Atlantic or the Pacific, which is pretty impressive. If you were going to fill that up today, only cost you about $27,500. Which is not too bad. It was also the first aircraft to fly a sitting US president. FDR flew in that on official business, and 3 of them were bought by BOAC in the UK. Registered, I can't remember the registrations, but anyway, there you go. Absolute stunner. Looks good. Why wouldn't you want one of those?
Proper fantastic airplane. And before we look in the comments for the fancy hangar winners, there's 3 things I'd like to highlight from the Paul Bertorelli interview. Annabelle says, Paul Bertorelli versus Farnborough. Yes, I would pay to watch that. Get Paul a slot at Gloucester equally. And Paul Bertorelli critique of British PPR. I pay good money for that. Strong start from Johnny. Johnny has been shortlisted. Very good pun. Does that look like a gazelle, Dave? Everything looks like a gazelle to Dave. Dave wins. Very elegant. Someone calling Photoshop. No, none of these. A few of the Johnny said his Maya Mercury composite does look like the sort of thing AI would come up with.
Yeah.
9 wings, 8 engines, a Caproni CA60. Yeah, that's a good choice. No Howard Hughes yet. No Spruce Goose. You're not selling this very well, Ed. Well, I'm sorry, Adrian. Martin Mars for the win. Both of those just retired. BV222. Oh yeah, 6 diesel engines. Very good. Johnny wins. Buy one get one free. Johnny is a winner. Cheryl says Ian wins. Dave wins. Ian's actually works. Johnny wins because that was bonkers. All win, says Jane. Ian for me, big flying boats win. I think that might be a Johnny win this week. Oh, there's a Dave wins. Dornier 24 says Chris Holiday. Johnny, Ian. Oh, there we go. German battleship of the skies. It really was a battleship.
Let's give it to Johnny.
Dave,
Yeah, thank you.
to Johnny. Yeah. There's some late Daves. Dave, talking of Dave, events.
Events, right, yep. The weekend coming up is very, very busy. There's lots of events. I'm not going to list them all because they're on the website, so go there. But here's a few. Starting off with probably the most important event so far this year at Popham, the Luscombe Flying. That's on Saturday. Also on Saturday is Eurostar and Friends at Brayton. Kernel Flying, that's Cornish for Cornwall. Kernel Flying at Bodmin. The Bolthead Brews Flying. And Saturday and Sunday, there's the Spring Vintage Flying at Compton Abbas. And there's looking ahead, just a reminder yet again, the Microlight Trade Fair at Popham is on Saturday and Sunday, 3rd and 4th of May.
Fabulous.
Okay. Well, sorry, I was just in the middle of doing something. Right, sorry. Thank you very much. Thank you very much, everyone. I'm going to go. Johnny wins on that one for me. Thank you, everyone, for watching. Thank you, team. Thank you, Paul Bertorelli, for coming. Absolutely brilliant. We need to get you into the UK, and we'll see all of you on next Wednesday, or at various events all over the weekend, or at Popham, hopefully. So, thanks very much, everyone, and talk to you all soon. Cheers.
Hello, this video is sponsored by us, the Flyer Club, and if you're not a member already, we'd love for you to join.
Members get access to all of our content, our free landing fees every month, exclusive webinars, and much, much more.
It costs just £5 per month to become a member, so head on over to flyer.co.uk/membership or click the link in the description below.
It's a proper good deal.
It's a bargain.